What I'm trying to fathom, Madam President, is why the senator would rather have these negotiations occur behind closed doors as opposed to here on the floor of the Senate for the American people to see broadcast on television. Don't you think that sort of interaction and debate and negotiation out in front of all 330 million Americans would be beneficial to healing our country and coming to some consensus about what the appropriate reforms should be?
Indeed, that is the beauty of the Judiciary Committee. Our meetings are public meetings. I will now conclude my remarks by saying that
if that wasn't the longest 10 seconds of Senator Kornin's life, I don't know what was. Now, what's happening here is that Republican John Kornin is trying to troll Kamala Harris for not supporting the Senate's watered-down policing reform legislation called the Justice Act by reminding her that her own sponsored legislation, the anti-lynching bill, was included. Now, clearly, Republicans included this legislation so they could do exactly this. So they could say, oh, Democrats aren't even supporting their own bill. Here's the thing. You can't stick a carrot into a garbage bill and expect that that'll do the trick. You're not going to trick Kamala Harris into supporting it because they made one tiny concession. And second, if Republicans actually cared about the anti-lynching legislation that they're using as a prop to advance their own bill, it would be law right now. But it's not, because Republican Rand Paul blocked its unanimous passage. And that should tell you everything you need to know about the GOP's commitment to making lynching a federal crime. Now, Republicans are trying to frame this whole thing as the Democrats not being willing to advance police reform legislation. And that's because the Senate legislation, drafted by Republicans, is inadequate. There is no change to qualified immunity protections, which shields police officers from accountability for misconduct, which is at the heart of the protest, nor does it establish a federal ban on chokeholds, again, which is at the heart of these protests. So it's not that Democrats aren't taking police reform seriously, it's that the bill put forward by Republicans doesn't take police reform seriously, and it's not worth it to debate a bill on police reform that doesn't actually accomplish police reform. Republicans are banking on this idea that all they had to do was throw some half-baked piece of legislation together without actually including any meaningful reforms. They're banking on the idea that the American people are stupid and won't actually bother learning what's in the bill, and that we're all just blindly gonna cheer on Republicans because they introduced a bill called the Justice Act, and so clearly that must mean they take it seriously. In reality, not only do we know what's in this bill and therefore know that they don't take it seriously, but the fact that they're playing games while hundreds of thousands of Americans have taken to the streets demanding change goes to show just how much of a joke they think this is. If the GOP cared, they'd have listened to the American people. They'd have included an end to qualified immunity and banned chokeholds and the use of no-knock warrants in drug cases. Instead, all the Republican bill does is tie some funding to police departments that volunteer to ban chokeholds and to study data on no-knock warrants. To claim this is toothless is an understatement. So instead of cooking up stunts to try and embarrass Democrats, Republicans might want to consider actually taking steps to reform the very real problem of policing in the United States. By the way, that's a position that nearly 2/3 of Americans share. So the fact that the GOP still can't manage to do something about it goes to show that their priority is not the will of the American people, but rather dragging their feet and playing games and hoping that we eventually forget. But the thing is, we won't forget. And with an election coming up in November, it's only going to give an outlet to the millions of Americans who've taken to the streets in protest these last few weeks to voice their anger and achieve some change.